When done right, building demolitions can be a spectacular sight. They fall to the earth in a magnificent fashion, and to be honest, the whole process should be pretty straightforward. After all, if you're dealing with something as massive as taking down a building, then the guys in charge better know what they're doing, right? Whether it's due to incompetence or a complete accident no one could have foreseen, there have been plenty of demolitions gone terribly wrong over the years. From buildings In 2018, there were plans for a controlled explosive demolition to take out an obsolete silo in Denmark. Hundreds of people gathered together to watch the silo come down, and as you can see at the beginning of the video, there was a wide open space where the silo was supposed to fall. The math was correct. However, due to outside circumstances, the silo began to tip in the other direction. The construction crew must have started panicking when the silo began tipping and ultimately falling towards the library. Fortunately, no injuries were reported. Manager Kenneth Wedge was later quoted as saying, "I simply do not know how it may have gone so bad. It was an embarrassing fumble as the team planned this demo for months. The silo should have absolutely fallen in the proper direction, but things didn't go to plan." Wedge would go on to say, "I will put my head on the block. We have prepared half a year for this." The library next to where the silo fell did sustain some minor damage, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. Ultimately, it's just one of those freak accidents. At least, no one was hurt. It's one thing to end up with a failed demolition with the structure leaning to one side. It's another thing entirely, and honestly rather impressive, to have a demolition where only half the building falls to the ground while the other half remains standing. Get ready to scratch your head in puzzlement, as this demolition in Lishou, China doesn't go how the team likely planned. While half of the building fell to the ground and erupted in a cloud of dust, the other half remained standing. As later learned in media reports, the building breaking in two was actually intentional. Sort of. The demolition crew wanted the building to break in two to make it easier to crumble to the ground. However, the plan was for both halves to fall simultaneously. It was an experiment that went hilariously wrong. But fortunately, there was a solution for this issue. Much like the silo in Australia, the demolition crew had to bring in a crane to demolish it fully. Once everything was cleared out of the way, it was finally time to begin preparations for a new real estate project set to take place on that land. However, for a glorious yet short chunk of time, onlookers were treated to the Leaning Tower of Lishou. Don't get us wrong. Having half of a building leaning to the side in a busy city is definitely a precarious situation you don't want to find yourself in. But from an onlooker's perspective, it's an amazing sight to behold. In May of 2013, a controlled demolition was planned in Brisbane, Australia. The silo that was set to be destroyed was a half-century old and was once used as a storage facility for a local beer brewer. The crew was all set. They packed the structure with 100 kilograms of explosives, which should have been enough to send it toppling to the ground. However, when the charges went off, the silo remained standing, albeit leaning to the side. Apparently, a building failing to topple over is a risk with these kinds of jobs. Troy McCracken, who works for Southern Cross Demolition, later told the news, "There's always that chance that it does hold up like it did. There's a fine line between too much and not enough explosives. So, what do you do when you create the Leaning Tower of Pisa in the middle of a field? Well, you get back to work." The demolition team had to work for an additional 40 minutes with their backhoes to give the silo the extra push it needed to fall completely to the ground. From there, it took several weeks for the nearly 4,000 tons of rubble to be cleared away from the site before the land could be returned to its owner. Something that really surprised me is how one piece of heavy machinery was able to push over a building of that size. It just doesn't seem possible. I guess the building was really just that close to falling. It just goes to show that when you have a problem, the best solution can be to simply roll up your sleeves and give the issue a little nudge in the right direction. In 2009, there were plans to destroy a derelict building in Kankiri, Turkey. The building used to be an old flour factory that was first built in 1928. 80 years later, officials decided it was time to tear it all down, with the building standing at an impressive 80 feet. The plan was to implode the structure in order to create a new shopping center. However, things didn't go as planned, as the building did not fall to the ground as expected. Instead, it toppled over to its side. Not only did the building fail to be demolished, but it completely rolled over onto its roof, coming dangerously close to flats housing dozens of citizens. It could have left many people injured, but fortunately, no casualties were reported. The only thing it left in its wake was a massive cloud of dust. The building itself remained in pretty good shape, and experts had to find another way to get it out of the way to make room for new construction. There's a reason why people need to keep a safe distance away from the demolition, but you can never know where the building may. An old smokestack was set to be demolished in Ohio in 2010. A group of spectators, including many children, had gathered to watch the structure come down. The plan was for the implosion to have the smokestack fall toward the east. However, due to an undetected crack on the south side of the tower, the implosion caused everything to fall to the southeast. This meant that the smokestack fell on top of power lines as well as a building housing backup generators. Naturally, downed power lines is not something you want to be near, which sent everyone in the vicinity scrambling for safety. It's a pretty incredible and almost unbelievable clip. Those people just happened to be right in the way of the power lines, which they never thought would be a problem. People screamed for others to get out of the way. The power lines in the area were destroyed, with some of the lines even falling in the area where individuals were standing seconds earlier. Luckily, no injuries were reported. However, officials later estimated that about 4,000 customers in Springfield, Ohio were left without power due to the incident. But the story doesn't end there. The power company ended up suing the demolition company due to negligence that resulted in over $19 million in damages. While the demo company had originally said the faulty implosion was the result of an undetected crack, the lawsuit alleged that the failure was also contributed by a failure to adequately cut a rebar, as well as the method in which the explosives were used. The lawsuit was later settled in 2014. Demolitions don't always go as planned. While it can be frustrating for the teams involved, sometimes you have no other choice but to throw your hands up into the air and say, well, we messed up. As long as not too much damage occurred and everyone remains healthy, a botched demolition is not the worst thing in the world. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, then be sure to leave us some future video suggestions in the comments down below. Thanks for watching this episode of Underworld, and be sure to tune in.
Thanks for watching. Like and comment, subscribe.